So I want to talk in this about how to answer the questions for the exam. So one of the first things I'm going to look at is the thought process of how to answer a question. So let's say we take this question. Explain one reason why the cache size affects the performance of the CPU. Okay, now we notice straight away it's 2 marks. So obviously this is the thought process I would go through as I'm answering this. So first thing is we've got one reason. So that means I need to explain one thing in depth for 2 marks. Okay. So I'd make a mental note. That's one reason. Okay. Now we've got cache size and performance that are key out of this. So essentially the question comes down to this, what is cache and why does its size affect the performance of the CPU? Okay. Basically, something like that. Okay, so that's my sort of thought process. I'm not just going to start writing answers, I'm going to start thinking first. Okay, so what is cache and why does its size affect the performance? And that is the question you need to answer, both sides of it. So I'm just going to shrink this a little bit to give myself a bit more room. So then I answer it. So I'll pick a different font just to make it look a bit more interesting so that I've got a different answer font. I'll do that one, why not? So this might be my answer in the paper. Cache is super fast memory that stores recently used instructions and data. Used instructions and data. It is used in the fetch part of the FDE cycle to check whether the data is already in cache, and then we can get it from there as it is faster than main memory. So I'm making sure to put, now that does seem a lot, like a lot of you might think that's a lot of data is already there, already in cache. Okay, but I've only answered the first part. Why does size affect the performance? And don't just put having bigger cache is better. Like, why is bigger better? More cache means that it is more likely we can use cache faster rather than main memory when fetching data, which will speed up the FDE cycle. There you go. Now I've written a lot there, and that might seem a lot for 2 marks. But it's better to write more, that it is more likely we can use cache rather than memory. More cache means it's more likely we use cache as more instructions will be there. I'll put faster next to cache. Rather than main memory when fetching data was built the FD. So there you go. Now what a lot of you will do is start writing. Then this is only actually, if I go to the sample paper, which is here, this is only actually this much, not this one, I've just completely gone to a different question. This is only actually this much room. So because you've got to do that, you might have to think about how you can get this nice and neatly shortened. Maybe I've written too much there and I need to think about how I can shorten that. But that's why you have to think very carefully before you start writing, and maybe write a little smaller than you normally would. Filling up the boxes doesn't mean you get the marks. That's just not how this works, okay? You need to write good answers in the paper. Right, now I'm going to look at a bad answer to a good one. So I'm just going to zoom in a bit. So here we've got a classic question. A hospital stores patient details on its computer network. The hospital is concerned about the security of its patients' details, because Data Protection Act, of course. Staff already use strong passwords to protect the system. Explain with reference to system security 3 other ways the hospital could protect the network. Now, what some of you will do is they'll go antivirus, CCTV, and then security guards. Something like that. Now, these are a bit too similar in my opinion, so I would avoid them. To using both, but you're not explaining with reference systems or reference security. Antivirus helps to stop viruses and other malware from entering the system and damaging the data. Okay, so now I've damaging, and I'm going to put the network system data because I want to throw back to them the fact that it says network system here, the network system data. Here we go. CCTV will deter criminals from entering and stealing the data storage and computers. Okay, so CCTV will deter criminals from entering and stealing data. Now, I probably wouldn't use security guards. There's lots you could put here. You could put encryption. I'm going to put encryption because well, that has got passwords already, so maybe not encryption. But there are others. Firewalls will stop entry into the system. User access levels will stop. I'll do user access levels. This is where different users have access to different data and systems. If you limit the number of users to critical data, patient's data, it is far more likely the data will remain safe. Okay, so that's why I said about user access levels, because if less people can have access to the data, it's far more likely the data will remain safe, etc., etc. I could have had education and training, which would teach people to not fall for malware and other things, and not malware, social engineering and other things. So there are quite a few that I could have put in that, but that is the good answer. You need to explain it with the system. This is 2 marks, okay, for each one, 2, 2, 2. Right, so here I'm going to talk about how to make sure we get the full marks and we really answer the question. So here you can see that it says a restaurant has a computer-based ordering system which is running slowly. So, key things off the bat, it's a restaurant, which I can't seem to spell, and it's computer ordering system. So obviously you order food, on the computer, right? A technician has said that the hard disk drive is fragmented. Okay, so fragmented. Hard disk drive. The technician has suggested using utility software to defrag the drive. Explain how the restaurant's hard disk could have become fragmented. So how did restaurants HDD get fragmented? And the key thing here is that it's the restaurants. Okay, this is key. It's not just any hard disk drive, it's the restaurants. So if you're doing online ordering, obviously you're going to make lots of little orders that are then deleted, because you make an order, it gets done, the order's deleted. So it's going to make lots of little files, because every order is going to be a file, right? So that's what you've got to try and think of. What are your 4 points you're going to make? So what is fragmentation? So, what is fragmentation? Fragmentation is where data is split up on a hard disk drive. This is caused by data being deleted and leaving gaps, which are then used. Right, but I haven't said how that's in a restaurant, or this restaurant. This could happen here, as the restaurant will take many computer-based orders, and those files will be deleted often as orders are completed, leaving gaps. So I've said what many computer-based, I think that's going to have a hyphen, isn't it? Orders. Fragmentation is where data, doesn't matter about the grammar, is where data is split up on a hard disk drive. This is caused by data being deleted, leaving gaps which are then used. This can happen here as a restaurant will take many computer-based orders, and those files will be deleted often as those orders completed, leaving gaps. Okay? New orders might then be placed, but are too large for the gaps, and so will be split up amongst other parts of the drive, slowing it down. Something like that will be the answer. Now I have got up the mark scheme, but I've tried to avoid looking at it. So I'm just going to very quickly, oh, maybe I'll close the mark scheme. Let me get it up again. So I'll just pause, unpause. Right, so orders have been saved on the system as order of food and then deleted once processed. So I've got my mark there. Once other orders have been made, new files are created. Yeah, I did that, which may be larger, but bigger than the spaces left by deleted files, and the order files are split up. So if we go back to my PowerPoint, take about orders, which will then delete as orders completed, leaving gaps. That's 1 mark. No orders might then be placed. That's apparently 2 marks, but are too large for the gaps. That was their bigger than. That's 3 marks, and so will be split up amongst the other parts of the drive, slowing it down. That's the other marks there. So we just quickly go back. Files, orders have been saved in the system as they're completed or deleted. Once all been made, new files are created, which may be bigger than the space left by deleted files. And so that's how you get it. But you just got to be very careful that you explain it in the terms of the system that we're talking about, because it's quite easy just to explain what fragmentation is and not relate it back to the restaurant. Okay, so now I'm going to look at a high mark question. This is 8 marks, this one here. You can see it's a high mark question because it's got a star in it. Now, there isn't any sort of specific way you have to answer these questions. However, I find this, which they have in the A-level, they do have a specific way, but they don't in this one. So this helps though. Knowledge, application, evaluation. It's the most sensible way to do it. You're saying what something is, you're talking about it in this situation, and you're evaluating whether that's good or bad, basically. I'm going to leave that there while I write mine answers here. So this is the question. People often want to buy the most up-to-date smartphones. So just make note that it's up-to-date smartphones, even though the smartphone they own still works. Discuss the impact of wanting to upgrade to the latest smartphone, and in your answer you might want to consider the impact on smartphone users, cultural, ethical and environmental issues. So this is a vast question that could be a bloody paper for how long it is, that you could write a whole essay on it, but I'm going to just stick to some of the simpler ones that I know. So one of the things you've got to think about here is that you might not get straight off the bat is that there'll be sort of a lot of pressure to have the latest model. So this could put some financial pressure on the smartphone users. So the pressure to upgrade, I'll put as more people get the latest smartphone, so I'm giving my knowledge here, right? There will be pressure for others to follow suit, to follow on, right? So that's my knowledge. Apply it here. For example, a person may not be able to afford the latest phone, and this could cause them some distress, psychological distress. Okay, so now I've done application. Evaluation. This would be bad for their mental health and does not promote good, healthy lifestyle, or something like that. I'm sort of waffling a bit the last bit. I could have probably just left it as this would not be bad for their mental health. But it doesn't matter, but anything's fair. So I've a knowledge, application, evaluation. Now that might have been a more difficult one for some of you to get. The cultural, ethical and environmental issue ones is a little bit easier. But you can see how I've given knowledge, applied it, and then evaluated it. So I won't do, and I'd say that would probably get me 2 marks. And then you've got to get 8, so, give a coherent argument. Now, you can give knowledge, application, and evaluate at the end, but I'm always cautious of that, because what happens is you do a general evaluation and not really evaluate each of the things that you were actually specifically talking about. So I prefer it if you do it on each one rather than a big one at the end. So I'm going to do it again over here for something else. Let's pick something else on here. So, I mean, this would considered really be an ethical issue if you wanted it, or it could be a bit of smartphone user and ethical issue. But let's do an environmental issue, a nice easy one. So, knowledge. Smartphones are made using components that have to be mined from the earth. Right? So, yeah, that's obvious. Then I'm going to do mining from the earth damages the environment, and often uses labour in unsafe places. This is bad as continuing to damage the planet may will eventually cause loss of life to animals and humans, or something like that. Okay, so knowledge, application, even though I spelled mining wrong. I sort of mixed in two there. I put in and often uses labour in unsafe places. Placing humans in unsafe working environments is bad for their health. But I'm sort of doing two there, really. But that's fine. I'm doing that. So there are loads I could have said here. I could have said that you've got sort of landfills, which eventually are going to cause problems because this damages environment. You've got the energy used by smartphones, energy used by natural resources. They're going to dig up things, break down trees, smash up areas, cause damage to the environment, bad for the earth, bad for humans, bad for people. And there's absolutely hundreds. If I go to the mark scheme, I could have written loads. So I haven't answered the question fully there. I've only given sort of two, which I would like to give at least. I would probably do 4 of those at least. But look, you've got loads of ethical issues, social pressure to upgrade, could lead to bullying, cost, there's loads of stuff. And environmental, we've got loads of stuff you could have written there. And smartphones in generally, you can say that they damage people's health because they, less likely to socialise, less likely to do health and fitness and stuff. But there was quite a lot there, so hopefully you could think about it. But what you want to try and do is make sure you get those sort of 3 marks, sort of 2 marks for each one. Think of it as 3 different marks. I know it's not 3 because we're doing this 4 times 2, but if you think of it as 3, hopefully you'll get at least 2 out of it. And then if you can only think of 3, you might get away with it. But there you go. So I hope you're ready for the exam. Keep revising, and there you go.